Hey everyone, Happy New Year. Welcome to another video. Today I'm going to do an honest review on the Harley Davidson Pan America. Okay, so I've owned the bike now for 6 months. I have 20,000 kilometers on the clock, which is 12,000 miles. I bought the bike with 8,000 kilometers on it already. It was an ex-demo Harley Davidson bike. So I've done 12,000 Ks on it. Of that, I've done 2 big adventure bike rides. The first one was the warts and all, where the bike failed. That was corrected very quickly, and the bike has been bulletproof ever since. I've done 2 videos since then. One was, can I kill the Harley, which I couldn't. And the next video was out to Big Red and back. And that was a 4,500 kilometer trip, which is pretty much, you know, about a 3,000 mile adventure ride over 5 days, 5.5 days. Bike was absolutely bulletproof. Only issue I had on that trip was 2 flat tires, and I lost 1 screw out of the shifter mechanism, which I had another 6mm bolt. I had plenty of spare bolts, so I just put another one in, problem solved. So how do I think the bike performs? Mate, the motor in this thing is phenomenal. Even though the KTM has 160 horsepower, this is rated at 155. This power has more dynamic. The way it pulls, the way it accelerates, I think this is a more exciting motor to ride, if that makes sense. It's a different sound with my exhaust pipe, obviously a different sound, but it's a very unique engine, and I love the way the motor pulls. I just love it. Now, the next thing I'll go on to is the suspension. So I was a bit dubious about this adjustable ride height, and you can adjust the suspension on the fly. It is absolutely, without doubt, one of the greatest features on this bike. I did find one little issue with it, is I used to turn the ignition on, then jump on the bike, and it would adjust the height. What you have to do is load the bike first, then turn the ignition on, and it will set the sag to you and whatever weight you've got on the bike. So a great example is when I used to ride with Di on the back, or when I ride with Di on the back, I would normally jump on, turn the ignition on. What I wasn't aware of is the bike settles at 30% sag for my body weight. What I do now is I wait for Di to get on the bike, and then I turn the ignition on. Then it sets the sag for both of our body weights. So whether it's luggage, 2 people, 1 person, whatever, the bike will set its sag at 30% for whatever capacity the bike is carrying. It's an amazing feature. The KTM only had manual adjustment, so that is a fantastic feature. The modes on this bike, to go from, I'll just talk on suspension firstly. The suspension mode in sport mode is very rigid. Like on bitumen roads, it's very rigid, very firm. If you switch to highway mode, it is just plush, and you can hit the same holes that you'd hit in sport mode where you'd get a slight jarring. You don't even notice them. So that is a real attribute to Harley, how they have set that whole car going by, how they've set that whole suspension up. So really happy with that. Now, what I did find with the suspension settings, I have some off-road settings. It has 2 standard off-roads, off-road and off-road plus. I actually modified and put my own off-road mode in there. So it is pretty much off-road plus. I take out the sag, so the bike won't sag at stopping. And even then, with that suspension setting, which is what Harley classifies off-road, when I found I was on long corrugated dirt roads, I actually found the highway mode was better. And I think it's because the suspension acts slower. So when you're hitting quick little ripple bumps, in highway mode, the bike would tend to float a bit more instead of trying to absorb every bump. So that's a hot little tip. Corrugated roads, go to highway mode, give it a crack, see what you think. And if you have tried that, jump in my comments below and let me know. All right, let's just talk about handling. So the suspension settings come all pre-tuned. And I've got some variability there of changing different ride modes and different suspension settings. Pretty much spot on. I just ride it through the different modes, and the modes I use the most are highway mode and my off-road mode. That's pretty much it. However, I have started riding it in sport mode because the bike is just a shitload of fun. It just absolutely is fun in sport mode. But my main 2 modes are highway mode and off-road plus mode. That has variations on traction control and also on your ABS system. In regards to traction control, when we did out to the desert and back, I just left it as was, so the traction control was on. However, when we did the sand dune crossings, I turned traction control off, which is a pretty simple process of we just hold the traction control button in and it actually turns the traction control off. So that's a great feature. Right, so what about this thing about 19-inch and 21-inch front wheel? I'll be honest here, and I honestly believe big adventure bikes with a 21-inch front wheel and a big fat 18-inch or 17-inch rear wheel, they're out of balance. I found the KTM was very flighty in the front, and if you look at the width of the tires from the rear to the front, I think there's too much imbalance there. So when I jumped onto the Harley, I really noticed the 19-inch front wheel. And what I noticed was it felt like it was stuck to the ground. It actually felt like the tire was flat. I worked out it's just because I'm getting so much more traction through the front. Now off-road, I've taken this thing to probably the most hard place you would ever ride a big adventure bike like this, and I never found a disadvantage with a 19-inch wheel over the 21-inch wheel. So I'll put that to rest myself. There'll be other people that will still go, nah, you need the 21-inch wheel. Okay, I ride this thing where I want to, and it's never bothered me. And in fact, in the sand, I think it is even a little bit better because you've got a bigger footprint. So it pushes, stays on top of the sand more and pushes through rather than cutting into the sand like a 21-inch tire will. I have done a few videos on what modifications I've done to the Harley, so let's go through them again as to where we're settled now. So this is how I ride it and how I've done my last couple of trips. So I've modified my handguards. These stock ones are pretty crappy how they clip on. These are simple bar ends. Cut the two little tabs off, shorten it, drill a hole, and these are, you can see the abuse these have had. Nothing's broken, doing a great job. I've put on the shorter screen. It's about 50mm lower than the standard screen, smoked color. I have raised the front fender with a front fender lift kit. Just stops rocks getting caught under there. And while I'm on the front fender, I've put a little tail on the back here, and it just sort of cuts the stuff throwing up into the radiator. On the rear, I've put a fender extender. You can see it's copped a bit of a flogging with the rocks, but it's hanging in there really well and definitely stops a lot of mud getting caught up underneath here and towards the shock. So that's been a great addition. Pannier racks, they bolt on in 3 places. And if you've seen my videos, you see I have the soft bags that hang on here. And what I've done is I've cut little slots in the back here, and the soft bags actually clip into here. Okay, and then I just strap them around the bottom. Expandable tail bag, mainly use this for our day rides, so fill it up with water bottles, towels or whatever. And this whole grab rail section here that it's mounted to, so it's a grab rail and rear rack. So on my big rides I can strap my stuff to the back rack here, and we've got some, got rid of the plastic handguards with this setup. I found a few of these protectors just on AliExpress. I think it was about $8 for that. I have another one on this side, and it protects the side stand switch. We have another guard here which protects the coil pack on the side of the engine. Again, AliExpress, cheap as chips. Heat deflector. When the radiator gets to 108, the fan comes on. This is a heat deflector, again AliExpress, bolts on in 3 places, simple install, keeps the hot air off your legs. MX style foot pegs. This is pretty cool. I found the shifter was too close to my boot, so I found this adjustable shifter. So not only folding tip, but you can adjust the distance from your foot. Because the battery is in a hard spot to get to, I fitted a Anderson plug right here, and my plug pack at home, which is a 12-volt jump start kit, plugs into that. So instead of having to get to the battery, I can just take this off, clip it in, get the bike going. And that is connected straight to the battery. I have the standard Harley Davidson bash plate and radiator guard. I run the tank lock system, so I have a tank lock bag which just simply clips on, and then I have a strap around the handlebar. Now, I did play around with seats. I had a tall seat on. I've gone back to the stock seat. Reason is, the tall seat I had, the foam was so soft, it actually compressed lower than this seat does. So I'm just running this stock in the tall position. I've been running these tires, the Continental TKC 80s. There's my plug that I put in coming back from out at Birdsville. And these tires, that has approximately 7,000 kilometers on it now. Continental TKC 80 on the front. This tire has 9,000 kilometers on it. And there's my plug. So I'm up for new tires at both ends. This is the Pizoma Racing carbon exhaust, 599 bucks. Mate, this thing is absolutely cops some abuse. Hanging in there. I've bent the bracket a few times. A few people have said they wouldn't put Chinese stuff on their bike. Mate, it's hanging in there, so I'm really happy with it. Let's give it a little listen. I have also dropped the forks. You can see the forks have been dropped down through the triple clamp. It makes it handle off-road a lot better, and I haven't really noticed the difference in on-road performance. It slackens the head angle, makes it more stable, and probably just slows the steering down a little bit, which I don't really notice. Now, what's gone wrong with the Harley since I've owned it? A few things. Let me go through them one at a time. One, inlet manifold tear. That was on our trip out to corner country with Diana on the back. Now, that was on my first big ride on the bike. So the bike had done 8,000 kilometers. We can attribute that to who knows what, whether it was just a manufacturing fault in the boot, whether the bike had tanks of ethanol fuel through it. Ethanol and rubber don't get on, so whether something there deteriorated the rubber. Either way, it was a quick fix once we found out what the problem was, and corrected by Harley Davidson, so I'm grateful for that. Coming back from Big Red, I lost the heat shield off here, so the two tabs here broke. That is a recognised manufacturing fault by Harley Davidson, and the bike is booked in next week to get a complete new header system with new heat shield, as it's been a corrected item on the bike. This is where I lost the bolt in here. So this little bolt here is what went missing out in the desert. So it's literally like this, but it's on the back of here. So that one bolt fell out. That's the only thing that's actually come loose on the bike. What do I think? Mate, I absolutely love it. It's the bike I'm going to keep for the time being. And look, I'm not endorsed by Harley Davidson. I'm not endorsed by Gasoline Alley. They're just friends of mine. Ferg's a good bloke that owns the store there. He knows if something happens with a bike, mate, I'll go and buy something else straight away. There's no commitment from me to them, and vice versa. However, they do look after me if there's any little issues I have with the bike. So that is fantastic, and couldn't thank the guys at Gasoline Alley anymore for what they do. So, but like I said, I bought this bike. I rang Gasoline Alley, said, can you get me one? They chased it down. I bought it, paid for it, so I can say what I want about this bike, and I'm absolutely stoked with it. It's just something different, you know, and it was just so obvious for me to be riding a KTM or a similar brand. And, you know, the other bikes I was looking at was the V-Strom and Twin Africa, but mate, this thing is just such an excitement machine. That's what I love about riding this bike. It's yeah, it's an exciting bike to ride. Di says the same every time she's on the back. She just loves coming out for a ride on it. And you know, I encourage others to get out there and just have a look at them. Just put it on your list, consider it. Off-road wise, look, it weighs the same as the KTM. One little caveat here, they advertise wet weight. So wet weight means full of oil, full of fuel. And I think they say 245 kilograms. So yeah, it's a 225 kilo dry motorcycle, which is the same as everything else that's out there. So don't get put off by that. The suspension is first class. The power is amazing. The handling of the bike is, you know, you've seen what I've done on the thing. So I think the average Joe can have a hell of a lot of fun on this bike. Shorter riders, the adjustable ride height, it lowers when you come into traffic lights, etc. It drops 50 millimeters. Plus you've got the adjustable height in the seat. You know, so thoroughly recommend the bike. I'm going to hang on to this one for a while. And look, honestly, I've actually thought if I got rid of this, I'd probably go and buy a bloody Street Glide or something. I sort of have a little bit of an inkling there just to chase bitumen for a while. But at this stage, we're going to continue on with what we're doing on this beast. So thanks for watching. I hope that helps a few people out there with bike choices, and whether if you own one and you think you've made the right choice. I know I made the right decision on this thing and I'm loving it. So yeah, catch everyone. Speak soon.